July 4th is a very important day in America. It is celebrated across the United States with great enthusiasm. People remember this date each year with parades and fireworks. This is because on July 4th, 1776, a truly special document was adopted. This document was the Declaration of Independence. It was a formal, public statement issued by the Second Continental Congress. It announced a monumental and life-altering decision. The 13 American colonies, once loyal subjects of the British Crown, would no longer be part of the British Empire. They were declaring themselves free and independent states. This was an incredibly brave and undeniably dangerous act for all involved. The decision to declare independence was not made quickly or without deep thought. It certainly was not made easily by those entrusted with such a weighty choice. Many long and often heated debates took place within the walls of the Pennsylvania State House. Delegates from each of the 13 diverse colonies gathered in Philadelphia. They brought with them very different opinions, regional loyalties, and understandable fears. Some delegates still felt a strong sense of loyalty to Great Britain. They earnestly hoped for a peaceful reconciliation with King George III and his government. Others, however, argued passionately and persuasively for a complete and final separation. The summer air in Philadelphia was heavy with oppressive heat. It was also thick with the immense weight of their choices that would shape the future of a continent. Therefore, July 4th marks the very birth of the United States of America as a new nation. It is a day often filled with joyous and vibrant celebrations. Families and friends gather together for picnics in parks and barbecues in backyards. Bright, colorful fireworks burst and light up the dark night sky in spectacular displays. Parades march proudly down main streets with American flags waving and bands playing patriotic tunes. But beyond these important festivities, it is also a day for solemn remembrance and reflection. We remember the immense courage shown by a group of men who risked everything. These men chose the uncertain and perilous path of liberty over the familiar security of being British subjects. It is an interesting historical note, often overlooked, that the actual vote for independence occurred 2 days earlier. On July 2, 1776, the Second Continental Congress officially voted in favor of Richard Henry Lee's resolution to declare independence from Great Britain. John Adams, a leading delegate from Massachusetts and a fervent advocate for independence, was overjoyed. He wrote to his wife Abigail with great excitement and profound emotion. He confidently believed that July 2nd would be celebrated by succeeding generations. He envisioned it as the great anniversary festival. However, the text of the Declaration of Independence, the document that explained the reasons for this decision, was formally approved and adopted on July 4th. This is the date prominently printed on the document itself, and this is why we celebrate on the 4th. The journey to that fateful July day in 1776 was a long and winding road indeed. It was a road paved with growing frustration, simmering discontent, and eventually open resistance among the colonists. For many years prior, American colonists felt that their voices were not being heard across the vast Atlantic Ocean. They believed the distant British government in London did not understand their unique needs or respect their rights. Parliament, the British legislative body, passed numerous laws and imposed various taxes that directly affected the colonies. Crucially, the colonists had no elected representatives in Parliament to speak for them or to argue their case. The powerful and resonant phrase, "no taxation without representation," became a common and unifying cry. It echoed through towns, villages, and colonial assemblies. Specific events and policies enacted by the British government greatly increased the anger and resentment building within the colonies. The Stamp Act of 1765 was one such deeply unpopular measure. It imposed a direct tax on all paper documents used in the colonies. This included newspapers, legal documents, pamphlets, and even playing cards, affecting nearly everyone. Then came the Townshend Acts in 1767. These acts levied duties on imported goods like tea, glass, lead, paint, and paper. Tensions reached a tragic boiling point on March 5, 1770, with the Boston Massacre. British soldiers, goaded by a crowd, fired into a group of protesting colonists. 5 civilians were killed. This shocking event was widely publicized and served as potent propaganda, further fueling anti-British sentiment. Another pivotal moment on the path to revolution was the Boston Tea Party. This occurred on the cold night of December 16, 1773. A group of colonists, some disguised as Mohawk Indians to conceal their identities, boarded 3 British ships anchored in Boston Harbor. They were protesting the Tea Act. This act granted the financially troubled British East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in the American colonies. In a dramatic act of defiance, they dumped 342 chests of valuable tea into the chilly waters. Great Britain predictably responded with severe and punitive measures. Parliament passed a series of laws known collectively as the Coercive Acts, or as the colonists called them, the Intolerable Acts, in 1774. These acts closed the busy port of Boston until the tea was paid for. They also severely restricted self-government in Massachusetts. These punitive actions by the British government intended to punish Massachusetts and assert royal authority had the opposite effect. They pushed the disparate colonies toward greater unity and cooperation. In September 1774, delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies convened the First Continental Congress. They met in Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia to discuss a unified colonial response to the Intolerable Acts. They drafted a Declaration of Rights and Grievances. They also sent a respectful petition to King George III, outlining their complaints and earnestly seeking a peaceful resolution to the crisis. However, the situation continued to deteriorate rapidly. By April 19, 1775, the first shots of the American Revolutionary War were fired. The battles of Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts marked the tragic beginning of open-armed conflict. The fight for independence had truly begun. The Declaration of Independence is undeniably one of history's most famous and influential documents. Yet many interesting details about its creation, its authors, and its journey are not widely known to the public. Thomas Jefferson, a young and remarkably talented delegate from the colony of Virginia, was chosen as its primary author. He was only 33 years old at the time of this immense responsibility. He was already well known among his peers for his eloquent writing style and his deep understanding of Enlightenment philosophy. Jefferson was part of a committee of 5 appointed by the Continental Congress to draft the Declaration. This committee also included such prominent figures as the wise Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania and the passionate John Adams of Massachusetts. Jefferson penned the initial draft in a little over 2 weeks. He worked diligently, often by candlelight, in the quiet upstairs parlor of a bricklayer's house he rented on Market Street in Philadelphia. Thomas Jefferson's original draft of the Declaration was a powerful piece of writing. However, it was not the final version that the world came to know. The Continental Congress, acting as a committee of the whole, made several alterations to his carefully crafted text. There were a total of 86 changes, some minor matters of wording, others more substantial deletions and additions. One of the most significant changes was the removal of a long and impassioned passage. In this section, Jefferson had strongly condemned King George III for his role in promoting and sustaining the transatlantic slave trade. Jefferson had called slavery an abominable crime and a cruel war against human nature itself. However, delegates from South Carolina and Georgia, colonies whose economies were heavily dependent on enslaved labor, strongly objected to this language. Some northern delegates whose constituents profited from the slave trade also voiced concerns. To ensure the crucial goal of unity among all 13 colonies, the controversial anti-slavery clause was reluctantly deleted. The iconic image often portrayed in paintings, showing all the delegates gathered together to sign the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776, is not entirely accurate. The formal adoption of the document by the Continental Congress did indeed occur on that historic day. However, most of the 56 delegates who would eventually sign it did not actually affix their signatures until nearly a month later. The official calligraphed parchment copy of the Declaration was not ready until August 2, 1776. It was on this later date that the majority of signatures were placed on the document. John Hancock, the president of the Continental Congress, likely signed it on July 4 or shortly thereafter. His large, flamboyant signature is famously prominent at the top of the list. Legend holds that he signed his name so boldly that King George III could read it without his spectacles, a symbolic act of defiance. Signing the Declaration of Independence was an act of immense personal bravery and profound commitment. It was also an extremely dangerous undertaking for every man involved. By putting their names on this revolutionary document, the signers were publicly committing an act of high treason against the British Crown. They were openly defying the authority of the most powerful empire on earth. If the American Revolution failed, and many at the time thought it might, they would undoubtedly face severe consequences. These could include imprisonment under harsh conditions, the painful confiscation of their property and estates, and even execution by hanging. Benjamin Franklin, known for his wit and wisdom, understood these grave risks clearly. He is famously quoted as saying to the other delegates as they prepared to sign, "We must indeed all hang together, or most assuredly we shall all hang separately." This stark but memorable warning underscored their shared peril and their unwavering commitment to the cause of liberty. The precious historical documents from America's founding period, tangible links to that extraordinary time, have been carefully preserved through the centuries. This dedicated preservation ensures that future generations can see them and learn from them. The original Declaration of Independence, for example, faced many perils in its early years. It was moved frequently during the chaos of the Revolutionary War to keep it safe from capture by the British. Today, this revered parchment is housed with great care in the National Archives building in Washington, D.C. It is prominently displayed to the public in a specially designed, bulletproof case. The case is filled with inert argon gas. This controlled atmosphere helps protect the fragile, aging parchment from further decay and deterioration. Millions of visitors from across the United States and around the world come to view this iconic document each year, often standing in quiet awe before it. Many key places across the American landscape bear silent witness to the momentous events of 1776 and the struggle for independence. Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania stands as perhaps the most important and hallowed of these sites. This is the historic red brick building formerly known as the Pennsylvania State House, where the Second Continental Congress met. It was within these very walls, in the Assembly Room, that the Declaration of Independence was passionately debated, meticulously revised, and ultimately adopted. 11 years later, in the same room, the United States Constitution was drafted, debated, and signed, shaping the framework of the new American government. Visiting Independence Hall today offers a tangible connection to the past. One can almost imagine the passionate voices of the delegates echoing through its chambers. It is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognizing its profound global significance in the history of liberty and self-government. Beyond the National Archives and Independence Hall, other distinguished institutions play a crucial role in safeguarding the vital records of America's birth. The Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. holds vast and invaluable collections. These include the personal papers, letters, and diaries of many founding fathers, such as Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton. In fact, Thomas Jefferson's own extensive personal library formed the original core of the Library of Congress after its first collection was burned by the British in 1814. Esteemed university libraries, including those at Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, also possess important manuscripts and documents from the Revolutionary era. Furthermore, state archives and local historical societies across the original 13 states diligently preserve crucial local records. These scattered but invaluable records allow historians to piece together the intricate and human story of America's beginnings. The impact of the events of July 4, 1776, extends far beyond that single momentous day in Philadelphia. The Declaration of Independence was a radical and revolutionary statement for its time. It boldly proclaimed that a people had the inherent right to alter or abolish a destructive government and to choose their own form of governance. It asserted the then astonishing idea that all men are created equal, endowed with certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. While the full promise of these noble ideals was not immediately realized for all Americans, including women, African Americans, and Native Americans, they became guiding principles for the new nation. They have profoundly shaped American society, law, and political culture for over 2 centuries. Furthermore, the American Declaration of Independence inspired countless movements for independence, self-determination, and democracy around the world. Its powerful words continue to resonate today, offering hope and inspiration to people striving for freedom and justice everywhere.